50 years ago, a young boy was caught up in a large-scale gang conflict in his hometown, New York City, USA, where he loses his family and home. After being missing for decades, Leroy returns to New York City, now a seasoned master of martial arts, and out for revenge. Today we're going to be talking about Leroy Smith, a Tekken 7 newcomer and devastating Wing Chun master. I myself am definitely a fan of the New York-born international merchant, and I believe that he, along with Lidia and Fahk, have some of the strongest stories of all Tekken 7 newcomers, and I hope Namco continues to follow the character and advance his storyline. The purpose of this video is a thought exercise, meant to answer the question: based on his fighting style and vague story, can we use history, brain power, and some math to reasonably discern which real-life martial artists could have trained Leroy in martial arts? I'm ready to go if you are. Let's dive in. Now, every character in Tekken 7 has a short synopsis talking about the character and letting us know what they're about. Leroy's in particular has been rewritten about twice, resulting in 3, maybe 4 different versions, which each reveal a little about the character. Before we dive in, a painfully brief aside about Wing Chun. Wing Chun, also known as Wing Chun, or Wing Sun, or Wing Chun Quid, is a Chinese martial art that uses high, narrow stances, redirection of force, excessive balance control, simultaneous attack and defensive techniques, and explosive close-range blows to subdue one or more opponents. It's a martial art initially conceived for those stereotypically thought of as weak: children, the elderly, women, yet adaptable for people of all ages, shapes, and sizes. There's no solid contention on the origins of Wing Chun. Originally, the art's origin was accredited to Ng Mui, of the legendary, borderline mythical 5 elders of Shaolin, the only survivors of the destruction of the Shaolin Temple at the hands of the Qing Dynasty, sometime between 1647 and 1732. Some, however, maintain that a more believable conception for the art is that of being born within the Red Boat Opera Company, a group of traveling martial artists and dancers who toured all over China in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and who formed an uprising against the king. I was looking for information on Wing Chun's history and its quasi-mythical founder, Ng Mui, and it brought me to a website on Wing Chun. While scrolling, I noticed that one of the many images used as a visual aid for Ng Mui and the archetype of mythical kung fu princess that she inspired were, hey, how'd you get here? Jam? No way. Ugh. Back to Leroy. We're going to quickly read through the various versions of his backstory, because each major iteration shed some light on him and the Tekken universe at the time. Version 2. About a half-century ago, New York was amidst the dark period where gangsters were rampant in the tens of thousands. Bribes to the police and the political world were rampant. No one could stop the gang's tyranny, and people had to be fully subservient to the gangs. As the gangs expanded their control of the city, the conflict between them escalated, eventually leading to a massive battle involving all gangs. The streets of New York were instantly turned into a battlefield of hell, fueled by explosions and fire, as bullets flew everywhere, indiscriminately killing anyone, regardless of age or gender. The family of Leroy Smith, then just a boy, was also involved in the fierce shootout, and all were killed. Leroy, too, was seriously injured and fell into a river, and was washed away into the sea, but luckily was rescued by a merchant ship and survives. In his fading consciousness, he deeply felt his helplessness, a deep desire for revenge against the gangs. Leaving America, Leroy traveled around the world as a trader. In Hong Kong, he encountered a martial art called Wing Chun. Fascinated by its one-on-one strategy, defense, and neutralizing the opponent, he settled down in Hong Kong to learn the martial art. And many months had passed. Half a century after what became known as the Big Apple Wars, or the New York incident, New York, still dominated by the criminal element, surviving. Although their power had diminished. Knowing this, Leroy decides to return to New York to take revenge against the gangs and liberate the city. Fueled by his anger, Leroy single-handedly attacks and destroys them with the strength of a fierce demon. During this time, he learns from one of the gang leaders that the current head of the Mission Zaibatsu was behind a large-scale rival half a century ago. Surprised at the fact that such a large company could have orchestrated this gang war, and is currently engaged in a war that has divided the world, has been behind the scenes for such a long time. Leroy now believes it's the root of all evil, and decides to join the King of Iron Fist tournament, hosted by the company. Nearly a half a century ago, the city of New York was overrun with countless gangs, whose members numbered in the hundreds of thousands. With both the police and politicians in the gangs' pockets, no one was able to stop their rampage, and the general public was left with no choice but to try to survive the chaos. As the gangs looked to expand their control over the city, it often led to violent clashes between them, which eventually erupted into all-out war. The streets were overtaken by gunfire, resulting in numerous casualties amongst young and old, man and woman alike. Explosions and seedy fires erupted through the city, turning the once vibrant city of New York into a war-torn hellscape. At the time, a young boy named Leroy Smith lost his entire family to the violence. Leroy, also badly injured by gunfire, fell into a river, eventually getting swept out to sea, where he was rescued by a merchant vessel that took him in. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, Leroy was angry at his own helplessness and harbored a desire for revenge against the ruthless gangs that had taken his family from him. And so, he left America behind and traveled the world until he came across the fighting art known as Wing Chun in the seedy streets of Hong Kong. Leroy, fascinated by this martial art that was designed to face multiple opponents, while using superior combat expertise to render one's attackers powerless, decided to stay in Hong Kong in order to learn the serious fighting style. Many years passed, and eventually, the incident in New York came to be known as the Big Apple War. And 50 years later, although weakened compared to their peak, the gangs and syndicates still controlled much of the city. And upon learning this, Leroy decided to return to New York in order to avenge his family and finally free his city from the endless grip of fear and violence. Taking it upon himself, Leroy struck at the gangs with extreme force, instantly crippling their power and influence. these two versions of his origin story are less retcons of each other and more of alternate tellings, each valid in their expansion of his personality and goals. We're going to focus on this section from version 2. Leroy, 2, is seriously injured and falls into a river and gets washed away to the sea, but luckily is picked up by a merchant ship and survives. In his fading consciousness, he deeply felt his helplessness and a deep desire for revenge against the gangs. Leaving America, Leroy traveled across the world as a trader. In Hong Kong, he encountered the martial art called Wing Chun. That excerpt is from the Wiki's straight transcript of the original version of version 2 and not my paraphrased version. Just point that out. However, you want to look at this a little closer. Rescued by a merchant ship by traveling the world as a trader and learning Wing Chun after settling in Hong Kong. It sounds like there's a possible link to Tekken's notorious Chinese merchandising mogul and the fighter for whom Leroy is a partial replacement, Wang Jinren. There's a possible connection here, but it's all just speculation right now. Still, that gives us the how and why Leroy sets out on his journey and what brings him to the place where he learned Wing Chun, Hong Kong. Now, you'd have to be blind as to think that Leroy studied from any other branch but the Ip family branch of Wing Chun. We can do some math and deduce that Leroy being older than 50, and that based on the time of the Big Apple Wars, which the Tekken verse is equivalent to the New York riot and gang wars of the 1960s and early 70s, we can deduce that the Big Apple Wars happened or started roughly around 1969. Now, assuming he learns about Wing Chun and chooses to settle down in Hong Kong during the 70s, how could he have learned the Ip Man style of Wing Chun in that time? As it turns out, there were multiple Wing Chun practitioners living, training, and teaching in Hong Kong during that time. Wong Shun Leung and one of Ip Man's sons, Yip Chun, were living in Hong Kong, teaching Yip Man's Wing Chun theory and expanding on it. Wong Shun Leung was a martial artist and fight choreographer trained in multiple styles and was a senior student of the prolific Yip Man. Wong even helped train Bruce Lee, Man's most famous student. Yip Chun, or Yip Hok Chun, was the firstborn of Yip Man's two sons and followed in his father's footsteps as a martial arts and police officer, stepping up his training in the light of the Yip's family flight from Foshan in the wake of the Cultural Revolution of 1962. He'd work as an accountant and news reporter by day and study in the evening. By request of his father, Chun joined the Wing Chun Athletic Association and became one of its founding members around the time of its formal establishment in 1968. In 2014, he was named inheritor of the legacy of Wing Chun, not just the Yip's lineage and sub-style, but the entire codified style. That's mind-blowing. The question is, what exactly were they doing in the 70s? The answer is, living in Hong Kong and training students in Yip Man's style of Wing Chun. You'll have to excuse my voice. I can't do my more serious voice when I get easily excited like this. We currently can't work out who exactly was more likely to train him, although records from the time and some more historical evidence strongly implies that it would have been Yip Chun. I really like these deep dives. They're really cool exercises. You know what won't be cool though? Editing this video. Regardless, it was really interesting that we were able to work out pretty precisely that it would have been one of these two, or their Tekken versus equivalents. Now, this is where we're going into that for now. And I would like to promise more videos being made soon in this style, but the single project has taken just about a year or two thanks to setbacks, not just the editing process, as well as change of circumstance in my life. This should have taken a day, maybe 2 weeks at most. It ended up taking basically 2 years. I want to thank everyone who helped me out with this, proofread the scripts, offered helps with graphics and such. Big ups to the homie Enrico, Deiana, who allowed me to use that bomb remix, the Wutai theme. We got a link to that below. So go listen to that, maybe hit his Patreon for more tracks. There are 2 more videos, well, more like 3 videos in pipeline. A lot of them just need to be remade from the ground up. I don't know if that's going to be possible. So who knows when they'll be out really. LPs are every week. Podcast Jerk is on hiatus. We're currently in the demo phase. The first episode went up, got a bunch of views and comments. It was very positive when we received. It was only the demo episode, and it was only me and one other host out of the 4 hosts. It's been since private. So, other than that, every damn thing is on hiatus but LPs. But I'm thinking of you, so please look forward to more new stuff when it drops. And I already have even more ideas of what I want to work on.